FM, Wellington Access Radio. You are here today in studio with Eddie, Nani, and Leah. It's like, the old gang back again.
Guess who's back?
Yeah, we haven't heard from Nani in a while. Like, how have you been?
Oh my God, March was a nightmare. I have an 8-year-old, and so we have a tiny little germ farm who brought in both strains of COVID. And I caught it once, and that was awful. You know what I mean? Like, for me, March was week 1. I'm a lady, I had my period. Week 2, I got the Delta strain. Week 3, I got the Omicron, and then there we go, we're back.
Wow.
There was like 2 4-hour bike rides somewhere in the middle of there as well, because I was like, have been bound for so long, I was like, anything is better than this. But,
that's insane.
God, yeah, well, we're glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, a little bit. It took me 2 weeks into April.
Honestly, I think that's just like a good time frame. You're like, okay, like it forces you to just be like, okay, cool. I actually need to like stop. Okay, I'm gonna get my energy back. Come back and be like, okay,
yeah,
we're
no,
back.
like for real. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, for all of you out there listening who have COVID right now, my sympathies, my love. Like, hydrate. Like, get that vitamin D supplement. Get your electrolytes up. We love you. Stay good.
Watch some Netflix.
Oh my God, I'm out of things to watch on Netflix. That is like the side effect.
That is like a level. That feels like a modern measure of sickness.
Right.
It's just like you've been so sick that you've kind of cleared your watch queue.
Right.
On Netflix.
I've cleared my watch clear and the watch list on Netflix, and I was like, I got to the point where I was like actually managing to get through projects I had put on the back burner. And when you're really clearing out like the, the shed, there was some trash in there, and I was thinking of cleaning the windows. Like, that's when you really just need to get the house.
Alright, so before we kick into the show proper, Liz, do you have any announcements for us this week?
Yes, I do. I just want to remind everyone that the Kiswahili workshop is still continuing on for another 5 weeks, is it, Eddie?
Yeah, this is week 3, 5 more weeks after this.
Okay, and so that's at Toi Poneki on Ablesmith Street, and it's every Saturday right up until the 21st of May, and the 21st of May is also a significant date, but I'll get to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be involved, contact Octavius or Wanjiku on aca@fanmailbox.com, or head over to the Facebook page and just send. I've just put a link up today, so you can head over to Africa Connection Aotearoa. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it was like today?
It's been fantastic. So today we're looking at like body parts. I've forgotten.
Yay!
I've forgotten most of them. Like I feel like so you had
shoulders, knees and toes.
That was essentially
was that the tune?
Not that tune, but it was essentially that format. So it was like macho is your eyes, masakio is your ears, pua is your nose, and mdomo is your mouth.
And what's your belly?
Tumbo.
And what's a big belly?
I don't know, I didn't get
Tumbo kubwa, there you go. That's what I remember.
Tumbo kubwa.
So
it's been really fun, and it's like the best language setting you could be in. Like, it's just one of those things where it's not a classroom. Like, and that's the best thing about it, is it's not like a sit down at desks. It's like all song and dance and kind of learning, and it's not measured.
So it makes it easier to remember.
The first class I went to, I think I came here. Well, no, I skipped the show. We were off the show that week, but then I think I had a day or 2 days where I couldn't remember anything from the class.
Right.
Day 3, I was like, oh, hang on a sec. I remember everything.
Yeah.
And it's just because it was all song, it was all like games and repetition and that sort of thing, but it was just fun. Like it made it really fun. It was really like relaxing and comfortable environment, which language learning is just the most important thing ever.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
And I just think, you don't get, there's no grade, there's nothing like that. It's just a group of people.
Sitting there listening to you talking, like, one of the things is that, like, African culture, like, historical learning is very different from classroom learning. In fact, like, human historical learning is very different from classroom learning. And hearing you talk about that, like, I had a very similar experience trying to learn Japanese and, like, all of these languages where nothing, brick wall, nothing. And, I've been learning from, like, a decade, each of them, like, from beforehand. And then I got into like environmental learning where they did that, online shuffle language exchange where they're like, we'll pair you with somebody else. And it works better.
Yeah.
It just does.
Next announcement.
Yeah, the next announcement is the 21st was a significant date because that is the last day of the Swahili workshop, but it also is Africa Day for ACCW. They're going to be running the Africa Day on the 21st. So my guess is it's probably going to be starting sometime in the morning and going to the evening.
Yeah.
When we have more details about that, I'll put it up. I've just been given the date. And the last announcement is I am one step away from white here or Jada, but we can get to that later on.
あなたは
Is it too soon?
金髪。はいはい。びっくりした私。Like no, holy crap! I can't remember. Like I saw you pull that. I was like, why is she wearing that hat? I mean, it's kind of special. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Damn girl.
I'm one step away. I've got one more thing to do.
Like
and
one more
then-
octave, and you're like Beyonce in her blonde years.
Yeah, wow. I'm trying to get icy white, you see.
Oh, there
but
we
it's
go.
either going to work or my hair's going to fall out.
Yeah.
So it's either that or Jada. But, you know, like, is that too soon? No, we're going to be talking about that later, right?
Oh, we are going over this.
Okay, so I
have
think
so much to
that's the
say.
one thing before we go
I've
into that.
offended all these people out there, sorry.
That's the one thing we get onto, and I think this is the best time. Like, yeah, we're gonna just probably have a yarn about the Oscars and the Will Smith and Chris Rock and Jada incident. And I think that's the plus side of this is that we didn't, because either we had weeks off or we had other people and we didn't get to it. I think it's really good because we've let the story breathe.
Yeah.
And I honestly think like that is possibly the best thing that I think that's something that media needs to do more.
Yeah.
It's just like stop, be like, okay, cool, this has happened.
Yeah.
And I saw someone talk about, and that's the one thing I think like shows like The Daily Show struggle with sometimes is that you have to report on something, you have to have your jokes ready, you have to have everything ready, and your commentary ready.
Yeah.
Within a let's say 15 to 12 hour time span. But then if you have something that is weekly, you have the time to let that story develop. You have the time to let that breathe, and I think that's really important.
And develop an actually thought out opinion. I'm gonna say like it shocked me. I meaningfully did actually have to take a moment to go through like several different thought processes and grieving periods, and I'm like, Will Smith means a lot to me. Like as an American black person, like he very much is that first cultural icon, and everyone's accepting him, and like he was really the first time like white people were like, oh yeah, we should talk about cool fun black things, and I'm like, what, you want to talk about cool fun black things with me? And like you start connecting, and he was a cultural bridge, and a massive one. And seeing what just happened, I'm like, oh wow, that is at the very least a massive support structure under the cultural bridge between like European infrastructure and black infrastructure, at least shaking minimally.
But yeah, so I think we'll come to that in just a little bit later on the show.
Absolutely.
I actually had a question. So I was watching a video yesterday, and it was talking about what was it talking about? Oh, yeah, it was talking about this idea of, and I was born at the end of the 90s, so I have no real frame of reference for this.
Right.
But it was talking about the idea that you look at mediascapes today and how heavily, like just across the board, how directly and heavily black influenced it is.
Yes.
And it was talking about, but also talking about, and it comes down to something I think when I listen to stuff from the 90s and how, I don't know, maybe it's just kind of taste or whatever, but the stuff I find to listen to from the 90s is very, very different from what a lot of people think of when they consider the 90s, like your kind of boy bands, your Britney Spears and all that sort of stuff. Where I think I kind of found like some of the R&B or the house or like, and that scenes.
I have something to say. Nobody was actually listening to that. That was like radio
Yeah.
play. Everyone was listening to the cool shit I did.
But then that was something, I was watching this video and it was talking about like this kind of how everything's so definitively drawn from black cultures and black music cultures and especially African American music culture. But it was saying there was a space previously, and that's partly why we have so many conversations about appropriation or like and appropriateness or like cultural theft or lack of crediting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was saying that there was a period beforehand, especially during the 90s, where there was almost like it's almost like the whiteness in music has been stripped out, where there was a space that was more reflective of white, especially white youth culture, without necessarily being directly drawn from black cultures. So and in the same way that you say, like, okay, like, let's say if we take the origin point of rock and roll and see how that evolves into the various forms of rock across the years, you say, okay, there's still a black root to it, but it's at its face value, that's become a very different space.
Yeah.
And it was saying, I just wondered, based on that, like, was that something you guys perceived during the 90s, that there was almost like a there was like a white, there was like a, you know, music for white kids, and you know,
can I push the like hell yes, like I'm gonna judo chop through that button like in a smash it, like come out on the side. Not just yes, I have thought about this like really deeply. Like one of the things like is it extends past the European space too. Like you've got like Japanese and Korean hip hop, and like there's a tiny part of me that's like, do you guys even know this comes from black people? Like I mean, you know, like some of them do, but many of them don't. Many of them are just listening to pop, American pop. They don't actually have the association with the black root. And like I'm seeing a generation of young white people who have the same thing I saw happen to like the generation of young Japanese people, where they just never saw it be black. Like not ever. They never had the connection. They listened, like as far as they come concerned, it comes from Eminem, and we don't think about it any further than that. Yeah. Like, and so they literally don't think about it. And I have been watching that. Like my dad being who he is, like an ethnomusicologist, like you better believe we got the education in this right at ground level, and then I watched it like evolve. And I used to have this like kind of joke I tell to myself, which is, imagine if white people win and nobody knows what black people are anymore, and like we don't know where all of this stuff comes from, and then one day they're just like, we used to have this source of freshness, hipness, hopness, and we just don't know where it's gone. Like, I've got to get back to the heezy for sheezy, right? Like you just kind of like you have this thing where like the all of this like ethnic stealing, like it's almost like, what do I want to say, like strip mining black culture into the point where it's like gonna be nothing left, and they're gonna be like, well, where is it?
I think my experience during the entirety of the 90s was, well, no, actually I'll say from the mid-90s, was really more in that b-boy space, because both of my kids were breakdancers. So it was very influenced, like the b-boys then were very influenced by music that I might, like my kids were very influenced by music I was listening to in the 70s. Right, so a lot of that funk and stuff, and they were the basic ground beats for a lot of the movements and stuff. So they were raiding my tape drawer, and like this is before CDs and whatnot. Like I had an amazing collection of stuff, and then I had a computer hard drive that had, I don't know, 20,000 tracks on it that was rated for Afro music, was rated for everything, for parties and stuff. And but for me, there was definitely a split between the 90s music that white people were into and the 90s. Like, there was a hip-hop club in town in Wellington called The Lab, and The Lab was where all the artists went when they came. So this is the Fugees, this is, who are those guys? See, like, everybody, let's say everybody used to come, everybody in hip-hop used to come to Wellington. I don't remember them because, basically, I'm getting old, so, like, my memory's going, but, So, like, they used to turn up there. So they'd just rope off an area in the club, and you'd get to meet, well, not Boys to Men, there was another group that was really out of it.
I literally just had a huge conversation with a white friend about Boys to Men. I was like, well, you were too young.
No, it wasn't Boys to Men. It wasn't Boys to Men. It was another group that came out here that they had that song where the angels and they're singing to heaven.
Okay,
Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Bone Thugs
and Harmony. Oh my God! Wow! Holy cow!
Yeah, Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Crossroads.
But I mean, like, this is how crazy it was. Like, one of the guys that came into the lab to do that, he couldn't actually stand on his feet. Like, the security actually had to walk him in, and he was absolutely out of it. And, being literally held upright to just basically greet the crowd in the lab and then go back to the hotel. I don't even know why they bothered, but that's basically what the lab was back in the day. But now, I don't know. When I came back from Australia, I see a whole other scene out here.
It is.
It's really different. It's on the street. It's a lot more aggressive. And the other thing too about Wellington in the 90s was Courtney Place was really quite family friendly
Yeah.
in the evening.
Yeah.
So you not only did you have the b-boys, and I think a lot of that might have come from the whole b-boy scene was quite strong here.
Yeah.
So this was young kids in town busking. My kids were in there busking all the time, every
Yeah.
Friday catching the late bus. But also all the way along the street you had family barbecues
Yeah.
that were raising money.
Yeah.
So you had lots of community groups raising money all the way along Courtney Place,
Yeah.
and then you also had the guys that did their cars up. So they had the hydraulics and stuff like that.
Oh my god!
And
you're
they
right,
used to
I forgot.
do-
And the lights and everything
Yeah.
around the spinning rims.
And they used to do the parades up and
My
down.
heart.
And so, like, when, you know, like, so going to Courtney Place, you didn't necessarily have to go into a club. You could
Yeah.
just walk up and down Courtney Place.
Yeah.
There'd be things, open places to eat.
Yeah.
You know, you could go to the movies or whatever. There'd be things to do on the street
More
as well
street
as
sides
the
than
clubs.
cafes as well, like
Yeah.
more like full expansion street
Yeah.
sides right out into the street.
Yeah. And also, we had the ride that was outside the lab that you get in and shoot you up into
Oh
the
my
air.
god! You know what? I completely forgot about its existence.
Yeah.
I actually forgot that existed.
So it was like
It was so
the
different.
whole Wellington was incredibly hip hop.
Yeah.
But it was more family focused in that sense in Wellington, and it was definitely, there was a difference between the clubs that played whatever the other music was in the 90s. I don't know what that was, but
Yeah.
and then the hip hop clubs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I just found it interesting because there's a guy on YouTube called FD Signifier, and he's really cool. But he was talking about this kind of space, and he was talking about it's almost this kind of space where, and the same thing. He was like, I remember when I was growing up, there was quite a distinct kind of not gap, but it was a very at the very least even like there was a culture, like there was a music culture that was largely white artists, but then also reflective of those experiences. And obviously that kind of doesn't exist anymore. So now and he was saying like, you know, a lot of the kids that, you know, the emo kids now
Yeah.
are like, rappers.
Yeah.
Like, the pop artists are taking from, same things, taking from funk, soul, hip hop. Like, I'm also finding it really interesting the amount of 90s R&B tunes
Yes.
that are getting revitalized as like hip hop or Afro swing or garage. And I'm not gonna lie, there's like, and some of them are great, like some of them I really enjoy. Some of them I just think like, let's just try and again it's the same thing as sampling, right? But it's almost that point at some level. It's just like, it's almost that kind of this big thing in culture of like nostalgia baiting. It's like, do you remember this song? Do you remember this song?
Yeah.
Let's redo it. Like, let's redo it.
Yeah.
And and there's ones that I think do it really well. Like, I think a really good one is a song called Decline, which is by a British artist called Ray.
Yeah.
And she takes, I want to say it's like an Aaliyah song, but then, or an Ashanti song, and does something, and then switches up enough, and it's enough of a different genre that if you weren't familiar with the song, you probably wouldn't recognize.
Yeah.
But then there's like Future and Drake did a song called Too Sexy, which takes I'm like the right set Fred, I'm too sexy for my
are you
shit,
serious?
and just takes that sample and people just go like, this is trash, this is
Yeah.
garbage.
I
Like,
mean, I think I'm a bit of a purist in that way because I really don't like the rehashing of 90s tracks that have already been rehashed most of the time. And I
Yeah.
like going back to the original, like usually the original's in the 70s or 80s somewhere, and like once you rehash a rehashed song, to me it just sounds a bit off.
I'm in a completely different camp where I absolutely love remix culture, and I think there's so much like cultural commentary you can do through remixing, like the pairing of different things, like what was it? It was like Miley Cyrus and Dre or some like, you know, like where you're just like crossing those cultural boundaries.
well, I was talking to one of my flatmates about it, and
The famous one, which was like Linkin Park and like some old disco funk tune, and people have just been wailing that. Walked in with my played it to my nephews. I was like, "You won't know this song." They're like, "We know this remix." I'm like, "You won't know this remix." They're like, "We know this remix." It came on with Linkin Park. They were just like, "Yep, we know."
Yeah, because the one I was talking to my flatmate about it, and he was saying like he really likes listening to Tupac, but he's also like, and like guys like Tupac and Eazy-E, a lot of time had really rubbish beats. Like that was that's the thing. But he was saying like you can, and that's what he really liked at some points, is that if you found the right instrumental from a modern hip hop tune, you can put Tupac verses over them, and they sound better because there were the better instrumental.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
it's
can't
like-
get you. Yeah.
And they were saying that I think that's often where I find things where, and I remember there was someone did, it was they took, like, Lauryn Hill's, that thing, and they took, like, one of Tupac's verses and just smashed them together, and because they thematically kind of sounded the same, it worked really well.
Yeah.
But also I think there's also points sometimes where I think it's almost that kind of TikTok and remix generation, and I guess sometimes the big thing with the cultural commentary in some ways is also the need to credit.
Yeah.
And
yes.
it comes in that big thing with TikTok, and that's the biggest thing is that TikTok is like a platform for white artists to essentially forget where
things originally came from.
Where their dance trends,
Yeah.
like even the dance trends, which come from largely young black artists,
Yeah.
and a lot of like remixes of songs and stuff like that, and it's the way to kind of like not deliberately, but it's that's kind of the problem with TikTok is it removes these without the actual context.
Oh,
There-
absolutely.
there are
They-
people-
they're
DJ
focused
complains
on-
about it constantly.
They're focused on the emotional aspect, not anything else, and I
No.
think that's kind of healthy, except when it's not.
Yeah.
Have you also? I don't know if you've also seen, but it was like the evolution of like modern fashion in the face of like black hip hop and fashion trends. Every time I see, like when I was a young warthog, like I would see white guys walking down the street, and it was rare to see them wearing like baggy jeans and loose shirts and like all sorts of hip hop artifacts. It was rare. Like they didn't do it. And now that's the norm. Like now,
Yeah.
like
Now it's the
fashion for
norm.
men is primarily based off of hip hop culture,
And-
almost singular.
And the reality is that like in the 90s, like when my kids were little, we were buying clothes bigger because we couldn't afford. Like this
Yeah.
was right after,
Yeah.
if you're a single parent, the welfare slashes of the early 90s.
Yeah.
So you did buy clothes that were bigger for them to grow into. It wasn't something that was just fashion.
Yeah.
It was actually practical.
It was kind of like the humble origins of ballet
Yeah.
kind of thing, where like it was like this used to be kind of sketchy, like, but then it evolved into something that became a cultural
Well,
artifact, which then evolved into
No,
the
it was
royal
already.
ballet.
I think it was already a cultural artifact in America before we
Oh, yeah,
started
yeah.
doing it here.
Yes.
So like you had them being, it was like wearing your saggy pants and stuff, but for the same reasons that we were doing it here.
Yes.
Only that it happened here a little bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were doing it for the exact same reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other thing, like living with a producer, I get hit with a bitch. Don't know where this one came from, mum,
Yeah.
all the time, and it's like, yeah, I know where this one came from. I know that beat. It came from. They mentioned something in the 80s. I'm like, no, actually, it comes from something earlier than that.
I know,
It
I
comes
love
from something
that.
earlier than that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we do this all the time. It's
Right.
like our little game that we
I
play.
was thinking, speaking on throwback, should we jump into some music?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Leah, this was like your special request tune.
Yes!
This is like Sugar from Chaka Khan. And
Oh my
then
God.
I'm going to do my throwback tune for the week, which is Mr. Loverman from Shabba Ranks.
Yeah, we got to do
Shabba.
some. But Chaka Khan, this one, I was like, she's back. I was so impressed with this
I
track.
mean, there's no back. She never left.
Yeah, she never left.
Alright, this is like Sugar. Back in Blackhouse 106.1 FM. That was Mr. Loverman from Shabba Ranks. Oh, that's like, honestly, it's been like one of those songs that like, I feel like I started listening to Shabba Ranks. What else? I listened to, was it Tingling? Which is like, it's such a stupid, but then, but also, I just found like, I just suddenly listened to this now, I'm just like, this is fantastic.
Yes.
There's just something about that kind of vibe and energy that I just think, I feel like parties are going to miss.
I think that at the time when it was like what was happening, it was quite annoying because it was like too full on, like that cultural infusion where that was what everyone was doing. I couldn't handle it. I was there at the time.
Yeah.
In post, a little sprinkling of it is such the right amount. Like, it's like a little lemon zest in like, your chicken, right? Like.
I saw a video from, it was like a British panel show and Shaggy was on it, and they make a whole bunch of like British comedians decipher what he says, and like they have to like, and it's cracker because then Shaggy's there, and Shaggy, it's also that weird point where everyone, like, have you ever seen that thing with Shaggy where you hear like Mr. Bombastic,
Yes.
and then you hear him talk and he sounds like really chill. It's like, it's actually just like it's his singing voice. It's how he sounds when he's on a song, but not when he actually talks.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's great. But then he sits there and goes like, no, there's some stuff like I fully speak patois. There's some stuff that Shabba Ranks says that I don't even understand. Like, 'cause it's just like,
He's just making up words as he goes along,
and I think that,
creating new patois.
and see, that's the power. That's the benefit of patois, right? Of having a language that isn't standardized.
Well, I
Is you
mean,
just have that space to go. Yeah, fuck it.
all things considered, even as a metalhead, there are some bands where I'm like listening and I'm like, yes, I do speak English. Yes, they are speaking English. No, I don't know what he just said. I'm sorry, that wasn't the point.
Yeah, TJ's had me listening to some of the newer rap artists.
Yeah.
And he goes, Mum, they're not even saying anything. They're just making sounds. It's like,
And again, there's ones that sound like, so there's a British artist called Backroad G. And his the first thing I heard from him was a track called Enough Is Enough.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys, like, it's kind of on drill, kind of on hip hop, some rap, more than rap sort of thing. But it's also one of those ones where it's more of a soundscape. So he's like, doing these gun shots. It's not actually the most lyrical, but he says it with just, like, he says it with so much confidence, and he has like the most kind of aggressively kind of like Old Dirty Bastard.
right.
Like he's got that kind of energy. And you sit there and go, do you know what? Like, and I've heard him on other stuff, and it sounds good. But also you sit there and go, okay, sometimes you're like, okay, this works, this just clicks, and this sounds like a really good thing.
I heard some, well, I don't know if you've been checking my playlists on the Spotify, but I've been listening to a lot of Gom, and I'm a piano at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if I said Gom properly, but anyway, really awesome workout music.
Oh,
But
yes.
I've been listening to these tracks where they use whistling and bird calls and animal noises
Yeah.
instead as to accentuate whatever the lyrics are.
Yeah.
And the lyrics are usually in Zulu, so
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow, this sounds really cool.
It does.
Especially the bird calling, and they're just doing the bird calling themselves, And I was just like, man, this is amazing.
I also feel like I can whistle. Like when I was in Brazil, there was like a thing where you had parties, and it was like someone would always have like a whistle, and the whole idea was that whenever the bird whistle, anyone it was for like a sports tournament, so all the people from our uni had to like freeze,
Right.
and you couldn't move again until someone blew the whistle again.
Right.
And I just really like that as a thing in parties, just having this kind of thing, and just having the space and just be like, okay, here we have something, we have a whistle, and you hear it like in Amapiano as well.
Yeah.
I really like that kind of like whistles being involved, because it just gives me that kind of vibe as well.
Yeah, it's such a good vibe, and if you want really good workout music, I'd say start listening to Gom and Amapiano. I can't say that click noise, but there's a click in that Gom.
Oh,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so onto like we've got 20 minutes.
We've got 20 minutes.
So
20 minutes of
okay.
20
minutes,
I'm gonna say, so we're 20 minutes. I'm gonna say 15, and maybe sneak in one more song.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're onto the kind of Will Smith sort of thing. It's almost been a month now.
Has it?
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we want to start? Like, I guess.
I have so much to say.
Go on.
Okay, you get 5 minutes. I'm timing.
All right, fantastic. I don't think I need 5 minutes. I have so much to say, but I think I can do it very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is that, like, Will Smith just released an incredibly vulnerable book, and I read all of it. So you have a really clear sense of this man who's been holding up the entire, like, bridge to, like, between, like, white diaspora and the black diaspora, like, for a very long time. Back before he came out and did the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air thing, there just wasn't any warm, friendly, like, jacked comedian guys. Like, in fact, he's not just the bridge between, like, European and, like, black culture at the time in the 80s. He was also kind of, like, the guy who introduced the, funny himbo, action hero to, like, his, like, rise with Independence Day and stuff.
Yeah.
He introduced being a smack-talking, jacked, fun guy who was also family-friendly and lovable. And it was the most charming thing that you could have introduced to the world. Like, he was the masculine ideal for a long time. The Rock himself built his career off of Will Smith's career, like, famously. And so, when I saw that happen, there was so many layers that just stung me. Like, I was like, oh my god, like, one, I feel bad because this is somebody who we stan Will Smith, right? But, like, watching him have that break in that moment, like, I was like, oh, but this is going to do so much harm, Will. Like, I love you, but this is the ripples of that slap will go on for far longer than you would like them to. Regardless of how they play out or what side you stand on, it will have a huge effect. Some white people are like, see, even Will Smith, black on black violence. And some people are like, but he was protecting his woman. And then some people are like, but who does Jada need protecting? And some people are like, yes! And so it's just got this layers and layers. It's like almost like a ethics sinkhole, right? So watching that happen, I I think that the biggest thing I wanted to say is like, you know, like it was kind of hard watching somebody who is an icon for me, like watching him have like such a public break in such a space that he is otherwise dominated. And I think that it's really important that the people who are inspired by him understand that, like, well, first off, he's human. Like, he went out of his way for the first time in his life to show you that. And I think that was also really big in terms of his impact on the greater black community and black men as well, is to say, yet you also, it's toxic masculinity to be a hyper-toxic gangster thug who swears and says the M-bomb all the time, but it's also a kind of toxic masculinity to constantly perform the friendly black guy, and it's equally a breaking point. And I actually even get both sides. I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, girl, I got my sexuality, I'm on top of me, you can't stop me, Nicki Minaj, like, and on the other hand, I'm like, no, I'm a mom, and I have to go to PTA meetings, you know, like, and so I really understand being stuck trying to navigate the black community and also my authentic self and also being a mom and also representation, also being like the one black girl who's representing all black people to the one black white person who's never met anybody but me. And it's exhausting work. And I there's a tiny part of me that's like, man, you lasted. I would have snapped like a wafer like 10 years ago. Like, yeah.
But my kind of thought of it is, like, I found it interesting that it united two very quite oppositional parts of the black community. It kind of raised the very kind of conservative, traditional, like kind of older aspects of the black community, and it kind of raised a lot of the kind of younger, more left-leaning, more radical.
Which parts of the older African?
I think it's in terms of, like, you know, family. I think there's, you know, how word like things like family values.
Right.
Kind of like. Because I found it, because it always come down to, like, from that kind of branch, you have to say, like, well, this is what happens, you know, he was defending his family, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And from the other side, the protect black women aspect came up. And I personally think that they both fundamentally misunderstand, like, have takes on that I think, while valid, I think don't get at the bigger issue at hand, which in some ways is like, and I think like you said, like, there's aspects of that dig very heavily into different types of toxic masculinity. And I think I was talking to my flatmate about it, and he said, like, you kind of got that kind of same vibe from someone like Terry Crews.
Yes.
Who Terry Crews, you know, and to his own admission, was not a very nice person and abused his family.
Yeah.
But then hit a wall, and suddenly, and then almost the overcorrection of that. And I think Will Smith often fell into that similar kind of trap. Yeah. But the difficulty from the protect black women side of camp is that it did it in a way that centered Will Smith's action, as opposed to Jada in that situation.
Yeah, Jada's own agency.
Yeah.
Because, and I think again, it's that kind of point, like, how much of that, and again, like I say, it's a boiling point, it's a break point, but how much of that would it have been if Will had gone, yo, Jada, are you all good? Like, how do you want me to handle this?
Like, the camera focusing on Will actually talking to Jada would have been amazing.
Yeah, and I think we missed a lot in that.
And that's the problem, is that, like, we can't see exactly what happened in the moment beforehand. But that's kind of the problem, that's the kind of difficulty I find with that is, and it is protect black women, but it's definitely that point of, it always comes down to that, but then is the way that we really want to kind of go about that in a way that centers
violence
the male.
Between males.
With male violence.
Not to mention the fact, like, the other layer of that being, like, you know, okay, protect black women, but, like, Jada's currently under fire for seeming like a manipulative abuser right now already, and, like, to have that be, like, the culmination of that, that doesn't protect her, actually. Like, you know, especially against another comedian who's, like, smacking a joke.
Now, I'd just like to say, like, you know, hats off to, who was the dude that he smacked? Chris Rock. Hats off to Chris Rock with the way that he handled it.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I mean, I come from their generation, right? And so I'm kind of looking at, when I saw it, at first I thought it might have been staged.
Yeah, me too.
And then you see Lupita Nyong'o's face, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. And then, you know, after and I'm like, oh no, he just went up and smacked the hell out of him.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this isn't going to sound politically correct at all, but I mean, that's what would happen in any other situation in our generation.
Yeah.
You want to talk about somebody's woman in a public space, maybe not the Oscars, but just at a party, chances are you would get your heads kicked in.
Yeah,
That's just the reality of our generation. The Gen Xers, that's what happened.
Mind you, in your generation, as I recall it, like what you would have done is given a glare that said, "My men will be out for you out back." Like like there would have been a small amount of dignity which says, "We're gonna do a lot worse than smack you on camera."
But even with saying that, I think that, I don't know, will it really affect him for years to come? I don't know. Is this just part of that Me Too sort of like woke, freaking, everything's politically correct, everybody's got to be empathetic.
That's the thing that kind of came up with it as well, was you sit there, again, the 2 points is like, from a Chris Rock standpoint, like, and again, like, not discounting how something may, and again, that's what people say, is like how stuff like alopecia and that thing can impact people's mental health.
Yeah.
But the thing is saying, like, that's the thing, people sit there and go, like, look at that show, that was, and again, it's also probably shows a point that, do we really need to be making jokes about people's appearances?
I think his response, it's like, the response outweighed the actual crime by far. People don't die from alopecia. Your hair falls out. Get over it. But some people can't. We're really sensitive about our hair. We always are. I'm completely doing the thing and know full well that I could go one step too far and my hair will leave my head. For reals.
Yeah.
But I just think that this whole thing about not giving Jada the agency in that moment. I mean, I'm really sort of like, what was the thing that made him feel like he had to run up on stage and do that without checking with Jada first, and then thinking about his own professional career, and wanting to address Rock later backstage. It just seemed really sort of like what are you doing,
Have you seen
dude?
that meme which is like, I didn't even know the Oscars were on until the meme about
that.
There's a tiny part of me is like, there was a long time ago, a certain orange someone said, like, if you want to get famous, make a fool of yourself, or to paraphrase him.
Right.
And that it does just work, like, and it's only gotten more and more so in this modern, like, economy, like, and there's a tiny part of me who's like, I don't know if that was, like, the worst move you made with your career, Will, because, like, people are going to be talking about you way more, but it's going to have less integrity, was what was like, stripped out
I
of
think
it.
I think the other thing that I find interesting is, and obviously, he's the Oscars have, the Academy banned him, barred him from the Oscars for 10 years. And I sit there and go, okay, justifiable, I think that's a good line to draw.
Could they possibly kill his career like Bill Crosby?
No.
I don't think it's going to get to that.
But the flip is, and again, it always comes down to the point of how, and it always comes to that core of what are non-white actors and filmmakers and directors, what is their position compared to the Oscars as a historically white institution?
Yes.
Because you sit there and go, I'm not entirely sure, you sit there and go, what are Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, I'm guessing Harvey Weinstein,
I have
like,
meaningfully thought
all those
about
guys,
that.
you sit there and go like, but again, okay, you're drawing the line here.
But not
Why
there.
weren't you drawing the line? Why did you draw the line when Woody Allen came? When all the stuff about Woody Allen, Roman Polanski came out. Shit, Marlon Brando. Marlon, all those, and again, it's that point. In time.
Elvis Presley. Come on. How old was Priscilla?
Like, BLM sure got marked as a hate group pretty quickly, considering the old Klan's been around for a long time, not with that label on it, and it is exactly as you say. Why are these guys getting off scot-free, but these guys aren't? And it's like, that's why I'm like, oh no, Will, that was a cultural landmine. You popped open a, like, pus bubble.
Yeah, the reason why I think I had that idea of it's that kind of odd meeting point of two very often quite distinct and conflicting aspects of black communities, is that's where I can kind of see, when Denzel and Tyler Perry go to comfort Will. Yeah. And you sit there and go like, and again, you can kind of see almost that age gap in some ways.
Yeah,
I think that's that.
Tyler Perry and the other gentleman are also an older generation too. And I mean, we often forget that these generational perspectives on things actually influence the way people respond to everything all the time. I mean, you just didn't go out and make statements about somebody else's wife without expecting a comeback.
Yeah.
It's going to come back.
And the other really big problem I had, and I think this speaks to like something I've been mulling over, and I'm quite keen to dig into a lot more depth, is the difficulty I have with meme culture and as a part of pop culture going forward, because I almost felt like the amount of memes that came out within hours, within minutes,
minutes,
like I just sit there and just go like this. It kind of automatically already takes that to a trivial space.
Yes.
You don't give it the chance to breathe. You don't have the point. Okay, let's actually have our discourses around that. Let's not, and I just think that was the big thing I found about and it's weird and it's tough because some of them really were funny.
Yeah, they really were.
Also, I had to sit there and go. And I didn't want to feel like, oh, I'm holy that I'm not finding this funny. But I had to sit there.
I can't stand people that do that though.
No, but I did have to sit there and go, and that to be like, I'm not going to, like, I feel like
you laugh because you otherwise will cry.
I feel like I had to kind of put it in myself.
You're
I'm like,
such a sensitive lot, you guys.
I'm not, not even from a sensitivity standpoint of things, but I'm also just like, this is a serious thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to try and give this as much dignity and seriousness that I can.
Yeah.
While I kind of formulate my responses, while I formulate how I feel about this.
Yeah.
Because, and it's weird, like I saw I want to say Behemoth Brewery, which is like a beer company here, like ran an ad within like the next day had one, and you're like, your marketing people just had like a field day.
Yeah.
But it's also the point of just
they used Will Smith in their marketing.
Yeah, they had like, because they have these kind of weird little kind of troll looking or ogre looking kind of things that they use to market their beer. You go if you check the supermarket and go Behemoth Brewery.
Yeah.
And the same thing, and they had that kind of thing about it was one thing slapping another in like a suit or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just sat there and go like,
guys.
It's almost it speaks.
Gosh.
Maybe it's not like a trying to be sensitive, but it's a thing about being like you're just driven this engine. There's no thought. There's no conscience. There's no that sort of thing. And that was a big conversation that did come up.
Well, this stuff markets. It makes money for people. That's like we live in the grand, last days of capitalism.
I like
people are trying to grab cash left, right, and centre.
I like the way that you actually said that, I'm sorry, so you really struck me when you were like, that was just the punishment did not suit the crime. Like, Will Smith used to be a comedian, and honestly, I think that I was more let down that he didn't have a witty comeback to, response. Imagine if his, clap back had actually been just a proper, hilarious clap back.
Yeah.
Right? And that would have actually been both acceptable, but, he's very probably going, oh, I wish I had said that.
Until he started yelling from the seat, that was when I realised, he's actually seriously upset about this.
Yeah.
I thought the whole slap was part of the joke.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's also scary because, and the thing is, Will Smith's huge.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Chris Rock, you think can go like that. But, and it's interesting because also the response is, like I said, how well Chris Rock handled that.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
like a champ.
Like an absolute champ.
Because I was super hoping about, and, Chris Rock's from Bed-Stuy, he's from Philly, that would have been horrifying.
Yeah.
But also really funny to watch them just watch that snap, just watch that flick. Because obviously you have people from specific contexts and watch that flip, and you sit there and go. And again, I think it becomes a big thing about respectability politics and that side of thing.
To be honest, I think there's something to be said because I love what you said because then my first thought was punishment versus crime. My first thought is, well, then he just should have made a hilarious clapback.
Yeah.
And then I hear what you're saying about taking it seriously, and I actually feel like that was the problem. Is that Will Smith took something way too seriously out of skew. And I think that the last thing I want to say is and I think that comes into context of having released a very vulnerable book in the midst of a divorce.
Yeah.
And
he's going through a divorce right now.
Well, he was.
Okay.
The two have had a lot of intense drama.
And I think that's the thing, and again,
in a public eye. Too,
and that's the one thing I thought was interesting about the whole joke is that, a week previously at the BAFTAs, your King Richard also won Best Picture at the BAFTAs with it.
Yeah.
And Rebel Wilson did a joke about August Alsina, the
okay.
guy who Jada had. I don't think it was affair. It was
the entanglement.
The entanglement.
Entanglement.
Yeah. And again, it hit that point of suddenly, and obviously Will Smith
But
wasn't.
Will Smith's been having entanglements too. So like, what's good for
Yeah.
the goose, you know, get it. Like to me, I'm sort of thinking, you've had an open relationship.
Yeah.
You've had entanglements with your cast of whatever that show was.
Yeah.
The you know the one,
There's
Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now she's having entanglements, but because she's a woman,
there's
Oh,
the entanglement is much more
other-
severe.
There's another layer.
The other point of that is he was like he was one of her son's friends. Like
Yeah,
that was 4
yeah.
years previous. So he was like
Yeah, but he was
20.
10 years older than him.
Yeah.
he was he was.
He's
Oh, no, yeah,
It's
he's
true, but you don't
18.
sleep with your mates. Like, you just don't.
Yeah.
do it.
No. As in, like, August
Yeah.
Alsina would have probably been 20.
But are they mates in that when they're in that sphere? Are they really friends?
I totally get what you're saying, but
Are they really friends, or are they just hanging out
clearly
close
not,
for
and
the
certainly
for the
not
clout?
anymore.
I guess I find it interesting. Like it becomes that point of it's. From what I can tell, like he's 27, 28 now.
Yeah.
It happened 4 years previously.
Yeah.
It's you sit there and go, 24 years old, and obviously.
And Jaden was like 14
No,
or something?
no. Yes, he would have been probably 18 because Jaden's,
Oh, okay,
Jaden's
so
like
it's
a
not
year
6
younger
years
than.
older.
But yeah, like I did sit there and was just sitting there. I'm just like.
We'll need to wrap this
Yeah,
up.
that felt like it was an interesting dynamic
Yeah.
as well because you sit there and go, how does that? And also it was that kind of the whole point of it, how it kicked off was that he was in like a mentally tough spot.
Yeah.
And then you sit there and go, okay, how does that change that dynamic? How does
Yeah,
that? Because,
and the way she used, I was helping him. Like, really?
The layers and layers and layers.
What
and
the
layers.
hell?
Like, I have a lot of respect for Jada, actually, like, all things considered. I think that, like, having to go through what she's gone through in the public eye as a black woman, I don't know how I'd have fared.
oh shit, yeah.
And I think that I have a lot of respect for Will Smith, too. And, like, I think moving forward, all I want to see is I'm like, okay, I want to see you two work this out because playing out your dramas on stage is great for your PR, but terrible for the black community.
Yeah, they're a family that the world focuses on far too much. I think.
Yeah.
Far too much.
And I think and again, part of it is probably it's like a lot of famous black people. It's just the fact that no one's really prepped for it.
No,
Like, no
we
one's
have no
prepped.
script.
You got no
We've
script
got no
for it.
support. We've got no script. I say what I say, but they're like, you better believe I've had more than one Facebook post of my own where I look back and I'm like, well, I'm glad I did because it got me the help I needed, but I'm sad I did because oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's like at the core of it,
It was like a cry for help.
How's our time now?
we have 1 minute 15 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm heading out the door and going off to Wanganui this weekend.
Enjoy yourself.
Yes, I'm taking the car, Betty, for a drive.
Ooh.
And we're just going to cruise up there. And
I want to come up with you at some point and we'll do the fashion flash mob like
Yep. Oh, fashion flash mob. I was hearing, like, should it be something that happens at,
I
birthday
agree.
that's coming up, soon?
a thing, a certain place
think?
coming
That
up.
could
Who
be-
is possible?
We'll.
Who would like to be involved? Who would like to be
I'm
involved?
just
in that?
saying.
Yeah, if
Call
anyone,
out to all your fashionable hoes out there.
Who wants to do a flash mob at a very important day in May?
That's very important.
just yeah. Okay, so this is our last. And we'll try and pick up some of these conversations and stuff. I think
Yeah.
these conversations are good to have ongoing.
Yeah.
And, like,
I really want to discuss young, famous, and African.
Next.
Next.
Byron.
Yeah, shout out for Byron.
Ditch
We
the
need
family,
Byron here for that.
Come to the studio.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been the Blackhouse on 106.1 FM. This is Wellington Access Radio. This has been Eddie, Nani, and Leah.
Like, share, and subscribe, guys.
Like, share,
We're
and
still
subscribe.
trying to get to 100.
Yeah, we'll catch you guys next week.
All right,
Peace.
peace.